Trust and credibility are the solid foundations for any relationship, whether we are talking about personal, political, economic, and also on the international level. This is why when one listens to statements and future plans, it is crucial that they be met with actions that support the implementation in order to achieve the stated goals. In the pursuit of building this solid foundation, deviations may impose themselves due to developments, and this compels action that addresses the situation in a transparent and timely manner to safeguard momentum and ensure the sustainability of the relationship and the attainment of the stated goals. Good evening. You're watching the Business Insider here on Nile TV International. I'm Ayman Salah. Our weekly program tackles events affecting economies and business, and we aim to bring you the inside story. Welcome back. Let's start with the first news item for the week. The government is set to privatize state assets and boost private investments. This came as the Prime Minister outlined the government's plans on Monday, where he announced a raft of new measures and ambitious targets designed to restructure the economy in favor of the private sector. The government plans to attract $40 billion in fresh investments over the next 4 years by selling stakes in state-owned assets to local and international investors, meaning it would raise $10 billion per year by offering a range of assets to the private sector. Our second news item for the week is that Egypt is being eyed by the European Commission to supply more gas than envisioned. The European Commission is about to unveil its €210 billion plan to phase out Russian gas over the next 4 years and quicken its transition to green energy. The plan should outline where the EU plans to get its alternative fuel, whether from Egypt, Israel, Nigeria, as well as the infrastructure needed to secure it. Egypt has been in talks with the EU over increasing LNG imports for months now. An Italian energy firm, Eni, has already signed an agreement to boost Egyptian LNG exports to Europe by boosting its gas production here. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Business Insider. Tonight we're talking about the state ownership policy and industry within that policy. Our dear guest tonight is Dr. Hussein Ghazzawi, industry and energy expert, actually an energy guru. A pleasure having you on the show here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with this report talking about the state ownership policy document that was announced, and then resume our discussion.
Mohamed Bouli outlined Egypt's vision to increase private sector investment to 65% in the next 3 years, which equals to $40 billion or 732 billion Egyptian pounds. In investment over the next 4 years in a bid to mitigate the shock waves of the Ukraine war on the economy. The vision revolves around 3 main components: a package of policy incentives, improving the market, and open communication channels with the private sector. By the end of May, the government is set to announce the details of a state ownership policy document, which will outline a governmental plan to offer a variety of state assets to private investors, including projects in electric vehicles, data centers, network for oil and gas, expansion of gas liquefaction plants, communication towers, and wind power. The Prime Minister also explained that stakes in 2 military-owned firms and 10 other companies will be offered on the stock market by the end of this year, adding that the state had already identified $9 billion in assets to be monetized and another $15 billion that would start preparing to offer. He highlighted that Egypt is eyeing $40 billion in investments in green hydrogen projects, which have become essential to facing the energy crisis and diversifying Egypt's energy mix. The country intends to increase the supply of electricity generated from renewable sources to 20% by 2022 and 42% by 2035. Named as the worst crisis since the 1920s by the Prime Minister, Egypt's economy has been heavily affected by the Ukraine conflict and sanctions imposed on Russia, leading to a surge in the inflation rate by 14.9% in April, significantly higher than the previous month's 12.1%. Egypt has also imposed an export ban on cooking oil, corn and green wheat for 3 months, as Egypt's wheat supply was hit severely, given that Russia and Ukraine provided the majority of the wheat imports.
Welcome back. So tonight, state ownership policy and industry within that policy with our dear guest tonight, Dr. Hussein Ghazzawi, energy and industry expert. Once again, a pleasure having you on the show here tonight. You followed the Prime Minister's announcement of the state ownership policy document. What is your general take on the objectives and the methodology?
Optimistic. I think as you started the program, it's all about trust. I think the economic reform Egypt did in 2015 and 2016, we managed to regain trust with all the financial institutes. Standard & Poor's and Fitch reported BB and B+, so we maintain our
ratings,
our credit rating. It's very important to share with, I think communication is important, to share with the public the size and the severity of the issue. It's not only in Egypt, it's a worldwide, as Prime Minister explained. Actually, we are prepared well with what we have done with the economic reform for this crisis. So communication and transparency, sharing with the public the problem as well as the solution and the plan. So it's very interesting to see more of an active role in the private sector. He clearly explained that in the last 4 years we had to have basically the involvement of the state in a lot of mega projects, which we all believe and convinced it was necessary. We all very pleased with what happened with the infrastructure. We talk about over $100 billion of investment in the infrastructure in the last 6 years, and it's paying off. It's paying off in roads, ports. Suez Canal, for example, crossed the 600 million revenue in April, 600 actually in 29 dollars, of course. Touched 600 million in March, 629 in April. What we have done with the Suez Canal, the improvement Suez Canal helped us. Even with the problem with the blockage of Suez Canal in March 21, in 6 days we managed it with Egyptian expertise to get rid of it. So it's very important to have the private sector playing more active support. The figures are clear, from a 30% to 65%, that's definitely significant. Having 10 billion every year for
We'll talk about that, but let's focus on the principles of state ownership. The document bases the principles of the ownership of the state within the economic system. How do you view those?
I think it's well defined. I have seen the draft. The Prime Minister said it will be officially announced before the end of the month. And I think for me it's a dynamic document because they have identified over 70 sectors where they will put up for sales. Other sector, the state will remain involved but probably reduce their involvement. Another sector, the state will invest more, and let's say talk about Suez Canal economic zone. I think that's very important. Education, health still also private sector will play. So I see the document is very comprehensive, a lot of thoughts and work is being done. And for me, it's dynamic because, and I think His Excellency, the Prime Minister, explained as well that we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how the progress. In 3 years, a lot of projects will actually be up for sales, completed for the private sector. So I think it's very important to have documents, well-structured guidelines. I think we were talking consistency is very important to maintain that. And as I said, it's a dynamic plan, can always be updated and upgraded.
You mentioned the $40 billion of fresh investments over the coming 4 years. Doable?
I think it's doable. I went through the list of the sector being offered by the state for the private sector. I think it presents an outstanding opportunity for local investor and for foreign investor to come. We are a big market, 103 million, going to 120 million by 2030. So we definitely a good market. Return on investment for all the project in Egypt is very good. I always say that the investors, they don't have heart, they need to have a good return, which is good. I saw a lot of incentive on the health sector, also in investment in Upper Egypt and the Suez-Canal Economic Zone, even with some tax grace period, tax relief for 3 to 5 years, also some incentive on the health sector, education sector, which is important. Egypt needs 1 million jobs every year. That's a significant number. We maintaining a good unemployment rate of 7-point-something%, but we with all this infrastructure, the government offered a lot of jobs that need to be continued by attracting other investment to maintain all this job offering. So I think I'm happy with the document. Most important thing is to start action quickly. And from the tone, I heard it in the press conference, they want everything to be out before the end of the month. His Excellency, the President, have a very clear direction on to proceed with that. And I'm confident personally that Egypt will survive. This is a very tough time. I think it's probably the worst compared to the Great Depression in 1929, which lasted for about 10 years. All the expectation is not only 2022, it will last to 2023, maybe to 24. But I think we are in a better position. We are facing what the entire world is facing, but I think we are well prepared. And it has been proven during the COVID. Egypt was among very few countries in the world with a positive GDP growth. We had 3.6% in 2020. If we compare to the rest of the world, was minus 4.4. Even the G7, they were at minus 5.9. So we did well in a very tough condition. And I strongly believe with all the measures taken by the government that we will overcome this difficult time. And I appreciate that have this clear communication. The president in the Egypt family, Iftar, actually had a very clear roadmap of what it needed to be done. And we saw a few days ago the press conference, which was basically based on the direction of the president during the Egypt family Iftar, with all the plan for the private sector involvement and the state ownership policy guidelines.
You mentioned a couple of them, but again, what are the requirements of achieving the $10 billion per year of fresh investments for the coming 4 years?
Very clear. It has to be very clear, well identified path projects. As we heard in the report, $9 billion already identified to be monetized. 15 million they are working on it. So it has to be clear. All the incentive, there is a lot of incentive coming. There is.
What incentives? What do you foresee as incentives that will lead to growth?
One of the incentives, we heard about it a couple of days ago, you don't need to have a place to register a company now. You can register over the internet.
Online.
The president made it very clear. A lot of all the young guys, they can work from their laptop at home or any place.
So digitizing is one requirement.
Is very important. I think the data, by the way, they will also invest in the data center. So digitalization and digitizing is very important. Transparency is very important. Communication and continuous communication, and the Prime Minister made it very clear it will have a very open channel for communications. I think it definitely can be done. It requires a lot of work, it requires a lot of collaboration. I think now he actually mentions the figures of 51,000 new operation license for new factories or new project being granted in the last 4 years. So there is already a track record proving what the government has been doing in a very important sector like the industrial sector. So I think as we said, digitalization, consistency, communication, and the track record the government achieve will allow us to achieve the $10 billion yearly for the coming 4 years.
More than doubling the private sector's role in the economy in 4 years.
Correct. From 30 to 65.
To 65%. How?
By obviously having this clear exit plan for this sector
from the sectors.
From the yes, to give it to the private sectors. I think also we'll need change.
Here we're talking about new and renewable energy. We're talking about real estate assets in new cities.
Hospitality,
hotels, banking, telecom, education.
Even LNG facilities as well, which is gas network as well, which is something actually new to the private sector. I think we have reached the maturity in certain projects, and I'll put my energy hat on. I mean, Egypt now we have over 13 million households where the natural gas connected to 13 million households. More than 50% of this 13 million was done in the last 7 years. We started that natural gas connection to the household about 40 years ago. So 50%, more than 50% in the last 7 years. You have more than 60 million Egyptians now having access to natural gas at home. That's a maturity in your infrastructure. Then now you can pass that gradually to private sector. We can use this example in ports now. There's talks about the ports with the government invested a lot in upgrading the ports. We have very strategic port over the Mediterranean, over the Red Sea, and it's definitely there are opportunity for the private sector on that. The desalination of water. Back to the renewable, $40 billion of MOUs being signed till 2030 with a lot of firms outside Egypt. Egypt managed to be an energy hub for the North Africa and the East Mediterranean for the oil and gas, and I think we will start having that also for the green hydrogen, for the green ammonia. We have the infrastructure, we have the proximity to Europe, we have the will, and we have the leadership who is focusing on promoting Egypt to the foreign investors. So I think we're also standing a very good chance to lead to the renewable energy or the green hydrogen and transfer basically. We by the way, the project of transferring Egypt electricity to Greece, it's already been signed, and probably in 3 years Egypt electricity will reach Europe mainland via Crete Island to Greece. So I think we are in the position to lead the North Africa as far as green hydrogen and green ammonia concern as a hub for that.
How can industry take its rightful place within the state ownership policy document?
It's very important for us. I think industry will still have a gap in our trade balance between the import and export. The government identified there are $20 billion of our import can be replaced by Egyptian local product. There is a lot of facility being taking place in the last 4 or 5 years to facilitate industrial areas going from just selling the land to lease the land. Let's not ask for mega investment to buy a land just to start an industry project. You can lease the land. Egypt, if you allow me with some figures, import $2.5 billion of pharmaceutical product. With what Egypt has done with pharmaceutical industry in the last 4 years, I think we have room to expand. We have all the ingredients to be self-sufficient and even export. Let's mention Africa. The pharmaceutical market in Africa, we talk about $16 billion per year. It is significant. Our part of that, it's almost nothing.
But that was due to a problem of pricing. For example, the medication, the prices that the medication is sold at locally is quite subsidized, and exporting them according to the regulations, you cannot change the price. Therefore, it's as if you're subsidizing the exports that you're selling abroad, and this required some legislative changes.
Let's do it. I don't know the details of that specific subject, but I think we have and we should have the agility to make these necessary changes, because you don't want to subsidize outside wallet. You want to give it to them at a free and reasonable market
at a competitive
prices where you can make money and it's
and gain market
and gain market as well. So back to this $20 billion the government identified pharmaceutical food processing product. I think if we talk about the food, last year was a fantastic result, and I think it will continue also in 2022. 5.6 million tons of agriculture, fruit, vegetables. But for me, we lack a bit of the added value. I think instead of exporting orange, I'm going to export jam, export juice. We need more of the food processing product and industry. That's very important for us. I think when it comes to the value,
we need to expand on the agro-industry field.
On the agro-industry, the value added is very important. Yes, Egypt have an unprecedented export figure in 2021, $45 billion. It's an outstanding, but definitely we still have a gap when it comes to import. So we spoke about the food, the agriculture business for agriculture product. We spoke about pharmaceuticals. There are other sectors. The industry still presents 17% of Egypt's GDP. Definitely, there's a lot of room to expand. I think the target is to reach 25%. The $100 billion export figures, it's not far from the 45.
Reachable.
It's reachable, but there is...
Within the policy document, there was also reference made to the textile industry.
Textile,
and the yarn.
of course, yes. Textile, leather industry, we forget about textiles, furniture. And I think what Egypt has done, have a specific industrial zone. We know about the leather industrial zone in Rubeki, Damietta furniture industrial zone. I think that specific industrial zone definitely helping. So that textile industries, there is a mega project also in Rubeki for textile industry is going to open soon. So a specific industrial zone that's definitely will help. And I see the distribution also of the industrial zone not only concentrated in Cairo, Greater Cairo or Delta, but also to Upper Egypt, to Suez Canal as well. So the diversity and the distribution of a specific industrial zone, it is very important for us. And if you allow me, for the value added, I think for the oil and gas, Egypt reached $12.9 billion of export figure in 2021 versus $7 billion in 2020. And that came from LNG, so that's a value added. You are not exporting a raw natural gas, you're exporting LNG using
liquefied
natural gas using our liquefied natural gas facility in Damietta and Echo. We have done an outstanding job in increasing the oil refinery capacity up to 680,000 barrels per day. So Egypt, however, you import oil because we still have a gap in oil, but you export oil refined product because of the capacity you have. The petrochemicals, there is a lot of progress in the petrochemical project in terms of upgrading existing and opening new one. It helped so that the figures of the
we still haven't launched all the petrochemicals.
No, not yet, but it's coming soon. By 2023, there is a lot of project will be open. 550% increase in liquefied natural gas export in 2021 versus 2020. 85% increase in all oil product, gas, and the petrochemicals in 21 versus 2020. I think more focus coming we see with you making use of the raw material Egypt has to have this value added, because it pay off. There is no point that you export raw material and you imported a final product which costs you 5 or 6 times. And we had this example before of many products, the oil, when you have the phosphate and you import it as phosphoric acid and so on.
You have projects such as the black sand?
Absolutely, yes.
You have
the phosphate with the phosphoric acid, that's $1.2 billion investment. That's another big project, continuous of the refinery project and petrochemical project. And as you saw the plan, having more LNG facility where private sector.
That's where I was going. Where's the private sector from all of this?
Not for LNG, not yet. For the phosphate, not yet. So I think now, for me, it was a good surprise to see that they are opening sector like the liquefied natural gas sector for the private sector to come. It needs a mega investment, and I think that's definitely is coming, because with what we see in the world now, and in your report it was very clear that the European Union rely more on Egypt and other countries in the region to export gas. And we have the infrastructure. We need more infrastructure for that as well.
What about mining?
Mining is a sector is very important. There is a lot of things happening in mining, and we see what Egypt has done in the last 6 years as far as the gold mining concerned. It's definitely a significant improvement. I mean, we came a long way as far as the gold mining concerned.
How so?
We have attracted a lot of foreign companies. We changed the mining law. The new law attracted a lot of people. Instead of profit sharing, there is loyalty. I mean, the whole scheme, it changed, the guideline changed, because it's equity intensive. I mean, mining, you mine in a very big areas, and the risks are there. So at least the new law attract people. I think Egypt start also mapping. We are 1 million square kilometer. We are a big country, and we have a lot of mineral resources. Mining still 0.5% of the GDP. The government have an aggressive plan to reach 5% by 2035. as I said, I think we need to replicate what have done in the gold mining, in other resources. Phosphate is coming with all this investment in building factories for phosphoric acid, because phosphate for the fertilizer, and we have seen what happened with the pricing of increasing fertilizer all over the world. So it is coming, not as advanced as other sectors like oil and gas, but it is coming.
Green energy within the context of COP27.
Green energy is important. I think Egypt has a fantastic chance hosting and presenting Africa for COP27. I attended a couple of days ago the Green Technology conference where between the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the American Chamber, where 40 American companies, 40 mega American companies came looking for opportunity, looking for investment in the green energy in Egypt. I think it was very, very, very interesting to see all this big company. 40 billion, as the report mentioned, $40 billion of MOU already been signed, mega project. Egypt having an excellent chance and opportunity hosting the COP27 in November this year. I'm very confident it will be, and actually the dynamic, it changed from the time it was announced Egypt to host. The dynamic has changed, and we'll definitely see more and more outcome of the COP27 and future green energy project for Egypt in the coming years.
Dr. Hussein Ghazzawi, industry and energy expert, thank you very much for shedding light on the state ownership policy document. And I believe that of the things that you mentioned, the requirements, aside from digitization and collaboration, you mentioned transparency, communication, consistency, and credibility.
Absolutely.
And staying the course, as you said.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your input. A pleasure having you.
Thank you.
A pleasure being with you here tonight. See you again same time next week. I'm Ayman Salah. Good night.